This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I always like to make sure that I bring you outside this Cleveland Browns bubble. It's so easy. There's a million Browns podcasts. There's a million of things you could do to just stay in this bubble and only hear about the Browns' perspective of things. But it's important that we keep an eye on the perspective of not just our division rivals, but our opponents as well, especially when your opponent is a division rival of the Baltimore Ravens. And you know who I'm bringing in to talk about the Ravens. It's Engraven. What a year for the AFC North, and what a year for Baltimore, right? Like, I think the Browns and Baltimore both came into this season saying, hey, this can either go right or wrong. And I think it's amazing that both of these teams had so much go wrong early in the season. And yet we're sitting here and the Ravens are 7-2, the Browns are 5-3.
Yeah, that's true. I think really going into this season as a Ravens fan, and I'm sure all of y'all know what our biggest fear was. It was injury. It was with injury, and the Ravens early on this season, even still to this day, still dealing with a lot of injuries. But a big difference with this season versus past seasons is that while there have been some guys that have gotten ruled out for the season, like the J.K. Dobbins, we literally lost him for the first week. Darius Washington, who was our starting slot corner, we lost him for the year. But most of the guys who we lost or who were out, they ended up coming back, or excuse me, some of them are still expected to be back. We lost Marlon Humphrey. He was out for like the first 4 games. Lost Adafe away at times. We lost Odell Beckham Jr., Rashad Bateman at times. Mark Andrews, he missed the first game. And there's been more, but a lot of these guys have already either come back or some are still on the way back. So with injuries thus far, it's actually been pretty good. We've been on the right side of it. So that has helped the record out a lot too, because as you know, injuries have a direct impact on everything, especially when you get injuries to your starter. So I've been happy that the Ravens are getting healthier and getting stronger.
Now, one thing that this season has taught me is I don't care how many rules they change. I don't care how much people say the game has changed. A good defense gives you a chance at a higher floor than anything. Like you look at the teams that have consistently have great defenses, right? Pittsburgh's a great example of this, right? Where they stink offensively. But since they are good defensively, it just allows them to hang around in these games and it gives them leeway. But if you're great offensively and your defense is bad, you don't win a ton of games, right? Like there's plenty of teams that can look like Deshaun Watson's 5,000-yard season in 2020. They won 4 games. But, you know, TJ Watt gets 20 sacks together, throw that together with some pretty bad quarterback play. They won 11 games. Like nothing gives you a higher chance at a floor than a great defense. And I think that's what we're seeing in this division right now is offensively, you can point to every single team in the AFC North and say, hey, they've had problems. The Bengals started off this year really shaky offensively. You look at Cleveland. I mean, we were playing with P.J. Walker. Shout out to P.J. My man won 2 games, but
there you go.
P.J. Walker, right? Like that's nobody's idea scenario. And then you look at Pittsburgh, ongoing offensive problems. And even at times, Baltimore felt like they were start and stop with that offense, right? Like it wasn't consistent every week like they wanted to be. Now they've hit a nice stride with it, right? And that's the thing that's kind of scary about this division. I feel like the teams are finally starting to hit their final form. And I feel like there's no reason for any of these teams to be bad. But that's what I look at when I look at this division. And then you look at Baltimore, right? They don't have the flashy names of a Cleveland or Pittsburgh, right? They don't have the names you go, wow, they got this guy, this guy, this guy. But they do have a lot of really, really good players who fit their roles really well. They got some guys stepping up like Jadeveon Clowney having a pretty good bounce back year from last year. They have guys filling in at the edge rush. You know, I made the joke on AFC North Talk. I was like, I feel like Pat Queen and Roquan are going to be the two most productive edge rushers you have on this defense for the Baltimore Ravens, because Pat Queen's been more productive than most edge rushers, right? If you look at him over the years, especially on a per pass rush snap basis. So the big picture in this division is that everybody has a great defense. Mm-hmm. And they bought everybody this time to figure it out on offense. When you look at this division, you see Cincinnati doing what they've done the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. You know what you've done the last month in Baltimore. You see what's possible with Cleveland, and you've seen what Pittsburgh's been able to do to stay here.
Yeah.
From your perspective as a team in first place, what team are you looking at where you're like, we can't lose because they're coming, right? Like, of all of those three great options.
I mean, I would definitely say 2 out of the 3, but I mean, really all 3. Because I was going to say Browns and Bengals, but the Baltimore Ravens, we lost to the Steelers a couple weeks back. So really, you could do any, mini, miny, mo for any team, any other team in the division, because like we talked about before, right now, if it all ended, and it obviously won't end right now, and things are going to be different at the end of the season, but right now, if it all ended, all 4 teams would be in the playoffs. And that's crazy, man. That is really, really crazy. But that's what it is right now. That just shows you how great of a division it is. All of these teams, they feel like like you mentioned too, they started off a bit slow, especially on offense, but their defenses allowed them to hang around. And they starting to get a little better. Obviously, the Browns, they just got Deshaun Watson back. The Bengals, Joe Burrow, he was a little hobbled early on in the season, but he still played through it. And they started off slow, but Bengals usually always start off slow. They are a big time second half of the season team. But they got stuff rolling before the second half of the season because they've been rolling now. And with Steelers, yeah, things can be ugly. Things can be really ugly for them on offense, but they find a way. Their defense is a playmaking defense. They getting Cam Hayward back, so that will help them be even stronger on defense. So there's always a chance with them. So with the Baltimore Ravens, something that I always talk about, sitting at 7-2 is great. That's nice. I love that they have a great record. But I do not want them. I want them to keep their foot on the gas. I don't want them to come down to how the last couple of weeks of the season, especially the AFC North, because it's usually always close. And we all end up scoreboard watching. We all like, all right, we want this team to lose. If this team wins, that'll help us out. If this team loses, then that'll propel us. Hopefully the Baltimore Ravens, they take care of their own. They continue to take care of their own business, because the AFC North is going to be a fight, man. And everybody's right there. Ravens got a lead of a couple of games, but as you know, in the NFL, stuff can change just like that. So it's important that Ravens they stay on point.
Absolutely. Let's kind of get into this matchup. I want to know from your perspective, as somebody's been watching the Ravens all year, because when you watch a team all year, you have a decent idea of like, okay, I don't like when we play teams that do this because this gives us problems on this side of the ball or that side of the ball. When you've been watching the Ravens, what matchups and what kind of teams do you I don't want to say not look forward to, but what teams and matchups do you look at after watching your Ravens team this year that you feel like could give you matchup problems or could be a little bit of an issue for the Ravens because you're like, oh, we haven't stopped this well, right? Or we haven't done well on this defensively or done well at this when we play defenses that do this?
I think it's really about getting to the quarterback. If a team can consistently get to Lamar Jackson, whether they just hitting him or whether they actually getting sacks, that changes everything. Because we've seen it this year. I mean, we've seen it throughout the years, but certainly this year, Lamar Jackson has time. Oh yeah, he's good to go. But I mean, you can really say this about any quarterback. But with Lamar Jackson, if they're getting to him, because obviously Lamar Jackson is different from a lot of quarterbacks. Because a team could have an excellent pass rush, but Lamar, he could just scramble, make a couple of guys miss, and take off. So if a team is getting to him, then they are doing something very, very right. Ronnie Stanley this year, he has been very weird. Because he'll have some nice plays and whatnot, but it seems like he just has not been the same ever since a couple of years back when TJ Watt rolled up on his ankle. He hasn't been the same since, man. And that's something that scares me because there have been some clutch moments, some key plays where Ronnie Stanley has just got straight up dogged, straight up just beat from the beginning of the play, and it has had a big impact on stuff. Whether it's been Lamar getting ready to throw, and since Ronnie Stanley got beat just like that, then the defender ends up knocking the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands. Or he ends up giving up a sack or something like that. And that's something that you definitely don't want to see, especially from your highest paid offensive lineman. So hopefully that's something that would be big to watch for in this game with Myles Garrett coming into town. Zadarius Smith trying to get some get back and whatnot. So that'll be something to pay attention to. That the offensive line, if they can hold up the Cleveland Browns pass rush. Because I remember even the last game, even though the Baltimore Ravens won and they won significantly, I still do remember that Cleveland pass rush, they were still getting to Lamar at different times throughout the game. So that's just something that we will need to watch for. Another thing would be, too, a team that can stop the run. Because the Ravens can pass the ball, and the Ravens have been passing the ball all over the field, which I love. I really appreciate how I feel like Todd Monken has really allowed Lamar to grow, allow Lamar to expand, take it to another level as a quarterback. Because I feel like the previous offense with Greg Roman, it was not a bad offense, but it was an offense that I feel like was capped. It was done. It had reached its max potential. But now under this new offense, it's allowing them to grow to do more. So if it's a team that could, that could stop the Baltimore Ravens run game, that would make the Baltimore Ravens one-dimensional. And even though they can pass, life is even easier for the Baltimore Ravens if they're running and passing the ball in a great way. Because you look at this last game. Ravens scored 37 points. Under Lamar Jackson, they scored 30 points in that game because Tyler Huntley came in and he threw the touchdown to Odell Beckham Jr. So they got 7 off that. But under Lamar Jackson, they got 30 points. Lamar Jackson did not throw a single touchdown. He did not run for a single touchdown. Didn't even run for over 100 yards. And they scored 30 points. So that just that shows you the growth of this Baltimore Ravens team, this Baltimore Ravens offense. Zay Flowers, who had been getting like 1 million targets a game, he had 1 target, he had 1 catch last week against the Seahawks, 1 catch for 11 yards. So I know a lot of Ravens fans were like, man, why is Zay not getting involved? They scored 30 points, man. Well, 37 after Tyler Huntley, but they scored 30 points. And Zay Flowers wasn't even involved. So that just lets me know, like, all right, this is great because Ravens offense, they're not even like fully in rhythm yet, especially passing wise, but they still able to put up points, even though the offense ain't clicking like that all the way. And I know it's so weird to say because this week they scored 37 points. Last week, I think they scored 31 points. The week before that, they scored 38 points, but they haven't even like fully hit their stride yet. So that's something that we are looking forward to seeing when they do. But yeah, that's a dangerous part about them. But yeah, back to your question. If the team could get to the quarterback consistently and actually get sacks out of it and stop the run game, those would be 2 of the biggest things that would play into the opponent's advantage.
And I have seen people when they talk about playing Baltimore. I mean, I've done it. I think I've seen a lot of people when they do their previews against Baltimore, they fall into this trap of saying, hey, we want to take what's there. We want to play it kind of safe against Baltimore and try to wait them out. But I watched this Ravens team all year, and I'm like, man, this is a team that likes to play chess. And if you sit back and you let the Ravens play chess, they're going to checkmate you, right? Like Lamar Jackson, since he can do all the flashy stuff, people just assume they're not trying to play chess out there, right? But Lamar loves to play chess. Like you watch him out there, he's like, I'll dink, I'll dunk, I'll dink, I'll dunk. You'll get in the soft zone, I'll run, and then I'll dink, I'll dunk, I'll throw downfield. and he loves doing that. Like the perception on him is just so far off from what the reality is at times, especially how he works the game mentally. And he is a chess guy, right? I think Mike McDonald on the other side is a chess guy, right? Where he's like, hey, we're going to put all these guys up here. We're not going to blitz all the time, but we're going to make it look like we could at any point. And then we're going to get you to the points where you're pressuring yourself, because now you're getting aggressive for no reason. Now you're just like trying to force it in after you just started to come out this game and be passive. And I look at this Ravens team, I'm like, the way to make them uncomfortable is to just come out and be as aggressive as possible at the beginning of this game. Like, it might not go your way. You might miss a tackle. You might give up a touchdown. But I think that's the risk you have to run, because if you let this Ravens team get downhill, they're a problem, right? And I think the Browns are a bit of a checkers team. We don't do much complicated on defense. We're not trying to, confuse anybody. We run man 78% of the time or something like that. So we're a checkers team. It's like, if you play chess with the Ravens, they're going to checkmate you. You need to force them to play checkers and just take pawns off the board, because if you let them get that pawn, we're just going to move this one up, and we're going to move this other guy up, and this guy up, this guy up. Next thing you know, you laid in a trap, And I think that's a change in mindset I think that teams have to do when they play them. It's like, hey, you just got to be willing to take some risk, because where you're going to have those holes in the Ravens secondary might be when they blitz like a Kyle Hamilton, might be when they blitz a Pat Queen, or one of their linebackers and one of their safeties, and you have to be comfortable going deep to intermediate, because they're not going to give you anything short. Like, they don't want you to have that, because they're worried about the back end. And I think that's where, if you're Cleveland, if you're Deshaun Watson, this is a week where, if you want to win, you're going to have to make some throws in those windows. And if you feel comfortable about that, you feel like you can win this game. But that's what I think the complexity is with playing the Ravens, is like, it does not appear when you watch them, you look at them on paper, that this is a team you want to be aggressive with, because the fear of missing a tackle on Lamar Jackson, the fear of trying to get the ball downfield when they're blitzing 6 guys, that is what they rely on, because they don't want you. Because when you're aggressive against them, you get that pressure against Lamar, that's when the Ravens start to make mistakes. I think that was a huge part in that Pittsburgh game, was that they were just aggressive all game, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And when you're aggressive like that, then you see stuff like wide receivers dropping wide open passes, right? Guys not being ready for stuff. And also, quiet as cat, Lamar's still gonna fumble that thing in the pocket. Like, he has not been the most secure with it all year, even though he did pretty good for a couple of games here. And then I think he had a fumble this week. Well, a strip sack, right? Was it a strip sack or a fumble?
Oh, it was both. Because on one play, Ronnie Stanley, where he just got beat from the jump, somebody knocked it out of the back of Lamar's hand when he's getting ready to throw, and that's usually what it is. He's getting ready to throw, and then somebody, boop, they knock it right out. But then there was also a fumble at the mesh point with him and Justice Hill, and it's been something weird. I don't know what it is with them two, because it doesn't happen with Gus Edwards. Keaton Mitchell, I can't really say it doesn't happen with him, because he just started getting involved in the games. But it doesn't happen with any other running backs either. It didn't happen with Melvin Gordon when he was playing. It didn't happen with Kenyon Drake when he was a Raven. But with Justice Hill, with him and Lamar, they have some weird lack of chemistry when they're at the mesh point. Because that's been like the third time I think they fumbled at the mesh point this year. But anyway, something that you were talking about with the aggression, that just reminded me of the Baltimore Ravens defense. And you were right about that. I feel like for the Browns to really try to keep that defense on their toes, they would need to be aggressive and throwing that ball downfield. One thing that the Baltimore Ravens defense have done a good job of this year, I mean, they've done a good job of a lot of things this year, but one thing in particular is they haven't been really giving up big plays like that. They are a bend. They bend sometimes, but they don't break very, very often. Like even in this last game, the Seattle Seahawks with Geno Smith, who's had a resurgence in his career. The last couple of weeks, it ain't been so pretty, but a team with a DK Metcalf, a Tyler Lockett, a Jackson Smith, and a Jigba, who caught that game-winning touchdown a couple of weeks ago. You would think, all right, Kenneth Walker as well, they're going to put up some points. But they only scored 3 points, and their only 3 points came from a DK Metcalf catch and run for 50 yards. So had he not got that catch and run, then who knows if they would have ever scored in that game. But that's, and even when they caught that pass, when they caught that 50-yard kick, like, we're not used to seeing the Ravens give stuff like that up. So my point is with the Cleveland Browns, if they do want to really make this defense not even necessarily less aggressive, but they really want to try to capitalize on the Baltimore Ravens aggression, because yeah, they are gonna blitz. While Jadeveon Clowney, that's my guy, hashtag JC24. I've been wanting him to be a Baltimore Raven for years, for such a long time. And I remember and I heard what everybody would say. Oh man, no, he's washed. He takes plays off. He's injury prone. He's this. He's that. I heard it all. And I've seen some stuff too. But I was like one of those people who's like all the red flags. No, still bring him here. We can change him. That's what I was hoping for, and it's worked out good. And then
never bet against the Ravens when it comes to a free agent in their late 20s to early 30s. Like that, that always works out for them. Justin Houston, like, Elvis Dumerville, Steve Smith, Anquan Bowden. Like, look, nobody capitalizes on the late window like the Baltimore Ravens.
And even now this year too, Kyle Vanoy, he's played in 6 games and he got 5 sacks. So he's been balling too. So
like, he can do nothing for the rest of the year. That's one of his best seasons.
Yeah, and it's crazy. But for the Browns, like, for them to really be able to really get into the Ravens' head, I agree, they would need to be aggressive early. And that would be a way to slow down Baltimore Ravens defense.
Right. So how do you feel about that right side of the offensive line? Because we know it's about to happen on the left side. They're kicking Ronnie Stanley out. They're bringing a guard with him, and that's the plan. Myles Garrett's going to probably get a chip block. They're going to have a plan for left and right shoulder for Ronnie Stanley, so he don't have to worry about getting blown by or getting beat inside and just have to worry about Myles. It's been everybody's plan against Myles the last couple of weeks. Ever since he had that Indy game, and I was like, they'll never let this man have a one-on-one again. Like, that was like, I forget what game was it that made people decide we just go never target Darrelle Revis. But that was the game for Myles where it was like, oh, okay, nah, we're not gonna go down like that. We're just gonna have to throw everything at him. And since then, it's been like 3 guys, 2 guys, sometimes 4, sometimes 4 and a chip on Myles. So I think a lot of this matchup, when it comes to getting pressure, is going to come down to your center, your right guard, your right tackle, one-on-one with, Dalvin Tomlinson, Maurice Hurst, who's been playing some good football, and Zadarius Smith, who is returning to the bank, who, look, he's kind of behind in the sack category. He only has 2, but he's been getting a lot of pressure. How do you feel about those guys holding up on one-on-ones if you do have to kick a guard consistently towards Myles Garrett?
I think this is a big game for Pat Ricard. Pat Ricard is somebody going into the season who, especially with a Todd Monken offense, in Georgia, he didn't really use fullbacks like at all. So I did not envision Pat Ricard having a big year this year. He's not having a big year statistically, but he has been very involved in everything that the Baltimore Ravens do, with helping out in the run game, with blocking, just being an extra blocker, being sort of an extra offensive lineman. But Pat Ricard has been having a huge impact on the Baltimore Ravens. So I would expect him to help out really on both sides of the ball. But with the right side, a big question mark going into this game is going to be who our right tackle is. Whether it's going to be Morgan Moses, who is our starter, but he did miss last week's game with an injury, or if it's going to be Pat McCarry. And Pat McCarry is somebody who has literally started across the entire offensive line throughout his career. So whoever it is, they're going to have a big challenge themselves because, like you mentioned, there will be a lot of one-on-ones. Kevin Zeitler, Tyler Linderbaum, I'm not worried about him. But they're going to have to really hold up on that right side because, I would expect a lot of extra attention to go to Myles Garrett. So it's important that the Baltimore Ravens offensive line just give Lamar time. But just as important is the Baltimore Ravens receivers just getting open. Because if there's been a lot of times when Lamar Jackson, he snapped the ball, so he's holding, looking. Nobody gets open. Still holding, looking. Nobody gets open. And holding, looking, and then somebody finally comes open. It's like, all right, hey, great play, awesome job, but we had the offensive line not held up, then that play might have went a little bit different. So it's important that they give Lamar time, but yeah, the receivers they take away time from the Browns defensive line.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the battle of the game, to be honest with you. Like, how much pocket time do you give Lamar Jackson? If I think the biggest thing against the Browns defense, right? If I look at the teams who've been able to have success against them offensively, it usually aligns itself with two things: bad tackling, not getting a great pass rush. When they can't get pressure with their line, or they can't force a team to throw the ball early, or they let a team get comfortable in that pocket, the best offense versus man coverage is time, right? I don't care what man coverage corners you got. If you get 5-6 seconds in the pocket, your wide receiver is going to be able to do something that's basically cheating on one-on-one, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna just go back forth, back out, because you can't cover that. You can't, like, that's almost impossible to cover when you're doing like a double, triple move, and it's something to where I see it hurt this Browns defense, where it's like, okay, Geno Smith was a great example of it, where you would get pressure on Geno Smith. You did not tackle Geno Smith. You let him by. And because of that, somebody broke free in the secondary that wasn't open to beginning to play. And then they score a touchdown on you, right? That's been their biggest problem is, hey, we got to finish these plays. That's where I'm worried about the Browns defense. It's like, are they going to finish these plays? Are they going to be aggressive? Are they going to do what they need to do? Or are they going to be scared to make a mistake? Because again, if you play chess versus the Ravens and you're not great at chess, you're not going to beat them at chess. And the Browns aren't great at chess, right? Like, we're good at getting downhill and playing bully ball, right? Like, just get pressure and play that kind of ferocious defense. But it's not something that we're great at, where we got to sit in zone and be patient. We're just not built like that. So that's what I worry about coming into this game from a Cleveland Browns perspective. Now, Deshaun Watson coming back, well, not coming back, second game back, hopefully. Again, man, with this whole thing, I'm just making sure he practiced before I even say anything. Yeah. It's gone. It could go either way sometimes with this whole shoulder saga. And you know how that is. Like when Lamar be having one of them weird injuries, it's like illness or something like that. You just got to make sure he get the practice. But yeah, with Deshaun, I felt like that was a good step against Arizona, right? Where he came back. I knew he wasn't going to light the world on fire that first game back because it's just not the game plan. You just wanted to play a smart game, similar to what Lamar did, right? It was like, okay, I don't need to do that much. Just let me not turn the ball over, make a couple plays, let the run game handle the rest, let the defense handle the rest, and let's go take this win home. I thought he had a nice veteran quarterback kind of game versus Arizona. I know everybody wants to see him throw for 300 yards every week, but the thing about having a good quarterback is the quarterback that knows not to do that or not to go for that, because it's like, hey, that's not what the team needs that week. Yeah. So I thought that was a nice step for him, because honestly, it's been a concern of mine that he hasn't been focused on the big picture at times. He's been focused on the Deshaun picture, where it's like, I want to throw for 300. I want to show him I'm back. This was a nice step in the right direction, where I'm like, okay, he did what was right for the team, right? He took the shots he needed to. He made the plays he needed to, but he wasn't so thirsty to get those big plays that he was hurting the team, which has been something where you watch him early, you're like, man, he's thirsty. Like, why is he taking these throws, man? Because he wants to show everybody he good still, right? But that's been a nice step in the right direction with Deshaun. Obviously, this is much different than playing DTR for the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And also recently, I feel like this Browns run game has found a bit of a stride without Nick Chubb, right? I think we played week 4. We still trying to figure it out. They found a bit of a stride here. I think Amari Cooper has been playing the best football of his career so far with the Cleveland Browns this year. He's been incredible, and he's even getting to the points where him and Deshaun were drawing up plays versus the Arizona Cardinals during the game, which just tells you how key he is mentally for this offense. When you're when you're Mike McDonald, you're preparing for this Browns offense. Obviously, it's not the same task as preparing for Myles Garrett and this Browns defense. But what do you look at? You're like, hey, I want to make sure if I want to feel good about the defensive performance in this game, I have to limit these players in this way. Who are those guys for you?
Obviously, it starts with the quarterback, with Deshaun Watson. Like you mentioned, he has been dealing with that weird shoulder injury, and you want to take advantage of that. Not saying to injure Deshaun Watson at all, but you want to take advantage of how he may be a little uncomfortable. If he may not be so sure of himself, he might not be fully sure of himself. And you want to get that pass rush. You want to get pressure on Deshaun Watson constantly and consistently. You want to make sure that your guys are getting home, and not only getting pressure, but getting sacks as well, because pressure, that can change a lot, but that doesn't end the play. When you produce sacks, that ends the play. It's a wrap. It's done. So you want to make sure you finish the job. I know an issue, especially with my guy Jadeveon Clowney, is that he hasn't had any issues getting pressure, but just finishing has been his thing. Because he'll have a quarterback, he'll grab him, but then that quarterback will slip out of his arms. It's like, oh man, you had the sack right there, man. What happened? So that'll be important that when they do get pressure, they actually bring Deshaun Watson down. Also, Justin Madubuike, Ravens defensive lineman, who he's been going crazy this year. And whether he get paid from the Ravens, he's going to get paid from somebody this offseason. Hopefully it's the Ravens, but he is going to get a lot of money. And he's been able to provide interior pressure. So that's, again, another way to keep Deshaun Watson on his toes, is because if you can blitz from the outside, that's one thing. But if you can get pressure right up the middle and consistent pressure right up the middle, that's even worse for quarterbacks because it's coming right in their face. So that will help. That'll help Jadeveon Clowney. That'll help Kyle Vanoy. That'll help our outside linebackers, our edge guys, because he'll have to either go to the right or go to the left. Because if you get the pressure straight up, then yeah, you're stuck, man. So that'll be important too. But yeah, Ravens secondary in this game. Geno Stone, who has come out of nowhere. Now I always knew Geno Stone had starting ability. We always knew he could play, and I've said it throughout times of this year and last year too with Geno Stone, that the only thing holding him back from being a starter were guys that were in front of him because they were really good too. Like this year, Marcus Williams is really good safety. Before it was Earl Thomas back when he was with the Ravens before. So he's had guys in front of him that have been really good. But now this injury to Marcus Williams is not a blessing for the Ravens, but it's worked out for Geno Stone because it's given him the opportunity to start and show the league like, hey, I can play. Now he's leading the league with 6 interceptions, and this dude wasn't even a starter. So it's important for him. We talked about the aggression earlier on. It's going to be important for him to help stop that aggression, for him to help limit that aggression, and for him to just try to continue to make plays as he has been against all types of quarterbacks. So, and hopefully he'll continue to do that against Mr. Deshaun Watson. But his role is big, man, because that deep ball, like we talked about earlier too, the Ravens have done a good job of not giving up the big plays, especially through the air. So that'll be important that on the back end, they're ready.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting game, to say the least, in the AFC North. A nice matchup between what right now is the two best defenses in the NFL. Do you think this is going to live up to that build? Are we going to have a defensive battle? Is this going to be an ugly, old school, low scoring game? Or like sometimes this is a low key, underrated possibility that happens with defensive battles, is that the defensive battle is so extreme that it ends up being an offensive shootout.
Hey, I mean, I do think it's going to be much better than the last game. Well, even though I ain't complaining about how the last game went. If this game want to go like that, hey, no problem, go for it. But I do think it's going to be a much closer game than that. Simply because it's not a 5th round rookie quarterback that's going to be getting the start. It's going to be, well, it's expected to be your veteran, your $230 million man in Deshaun Watson. So now obviously we know too that not having a starting quarterback, that changes everything. And while as a fan, without your starting quarterback, you still do have some hope, but it just ain't the same, man. It's not the same. You hope for the best, but expectations are a whole lot lower without your starter. So now with Deshaun Watson being back, I'm sure expectations are a lot higher, as they should be, because he's a better quarterback than a PJ Walker, than a DTR, and that's obviously no disrespect to them, but that's Deshaun Watson versus those two, a rookie and a guy who was a backup, and he did his thing in what was it, XFL? I think it was XFL with PJ Walker.
He was balling a couple years ago. Here's the thing about PJ Walker, man. PJ Walker is like the basketball player that takes a lot of bad shots, but sometimes he makes them. You know, like would it bug you these shots he was taking if his name, like, I don't know if you know much about Dion Waiters, but Dion Waiters used to be on the Cavs. Yes, and he used to drive people crazy because Dion Waiters would take like 40 shots and shoot like he is Kyrie when he not Kyrie. But those shots don't bug you when they Kyrie, right? And that's the thing about PJ. It's like, look, man, the shots ain't that bad. It's just that he's taking them is the problem. Like, if Deshaun made these throws, they probably would work out. But PJ, hey, he will have a game where he puts together like a 94 QBR, which like is rare. Rare. Like, he's put together like 2 of those in his NFL career. The problem is he's also just as capable of giving you like a 6 QBR. So it's like... It's like, that's the thing with a guy like PJ. It's like, hey, man, he's going to take his shots downfield. And while that's not the most comforting notion for backup, it is something that does help you win games. When you're talking about just not having optimal quarterback players, you could just get 3-4 throws in a game. Then you feel like you can make enough plays to win. And that's kind of the life that PJ Walker is living. But hopefully we don't have to play PJ Walker versus the Baltimore Ravens. Even though, again, being aggressive, you know, I wouldn't rule them out. But yeah, I think that's going to be the key to the game for real. The Browns, like whoever forces the other team to play their game, I think is probably going to win it, right? If you're watching this game and it feels a lot like chess, that's probably going to Baltimore's way, right? They're playing nice and slow. They're able to just get some of that short stuff early and then, you know, start peppering Mark Andrews there right when you forget about him. And then once you're worried about Mark, he going to go over top to try to kill you with Zay Flowers and that kind of stuff. Or you get like them penalties on Odell because you're trying to really like get an interception or something like that. Or if you go out there and you see just constant pressure from the Cleveland Browns, if you see, you know, just taking shots downfield, getting chunks on offense consistently, then that's how you know this is going the Browns' way. Like, you want to either this is going to feel like chess or a downhill kind of checkers game during this game with Baltimore. And I think that's going to be what determines it this week. And it's going to be fascinating to see that battle of both these teams going out there and trying to like force their way with each other. And that's why division games are always great, because they know that's what the Browns want to do. And the Browns know exactly what the Ravens want to do to them. So it's just going to be that struggle right off the bat to control the tempo of this game.
Yeah, and John Harbaugh, he talked about it in a presser that he gave on Monday. And he said he's going against the Cleveland Browns, especially with it being a division game. He said they got to start preparing early since it's a division game, because these are teams, players, coaching staffs that they know each other big time. So you got to put in a lot of extra work to make sure your team hopefully gets the job done. So, yeah, it should be really fun, man.
Definitely, man. Thank you for coming on, Engraven. Yeah. You have a great day and have a great rest of your night. Browns fans, peace.